The 1980s were over, and as far as WWE was concerned, that meant, well, not that much really. Yes, the face of sports entertainment would change dramatically over the course of the decade, but in 1990 the status quo was very much being maintained, with larger-than-life living cartoon characters Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior leading the way. Expected to bring in the big bucks at the box office, Hogan and Warrior were also responsible for some of WWE's best matches that year, though they were well supported by a colourful cast of hard-working characters up and down the card. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 best WWE matches of 1990. Join us! Number 10, Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior versus Mr. Perfect and the Genius at Saturday night's main event. 1990 was a very different time in professional wrestling, where grappling ability wasn't nearly as important as star power. As a result, matches like this one from the January 27th edition of Saturday night's main event stand out, because this was the first time two icons shared the ring at the same time. World Champion Hulk Hogan and Intercontinental Champion The Ultimate Warrior teamed up to take on the dastardly Mr. Perfect and the world's most annoying poet, The Genius. Macho Man's little brother used his scroll as a weapon on the Hulkster behind the referee's back, allowing the heels to take over, but when a moonsault attempt failed to hit the target, Hogan was able to tag in his partner and let him go on a tear. Warrior ran wild on the Genius, battering him like he was a sausage in a greasy chip shop, only for Hogan to tag in at the last minute to claim the victory for himself. Just Hulk Hogan doing Hulk Hogan things really, isn't it? Certainly not a Mac classic by any standards, but in terms of big names and big developments, this was everything it needed to be. Number 9, The Ultimate Warrior versus Ted DiBiase at the Main Event 4. The Main Event was a special program that served as a precursor to the B-grade pay-per-views that would come later down the line. The fourth edition of the show, which aired on November 23rd, 1990, played host to a world title match between evil challenger the $1 Million Man and good guy champion The Ultimate Warrior. Rich man versus crazy man, a tale as old as time. Warrior stood tall during the early stages of the fight, brushing off Ted's punches like they were nothing. Things changed when Virgil started to get involved though, which allowed DiBiase to take control much to the annoyance of the crowd. Even with the odds stacked firmly against him, Warrior was able to come back from what was essentially a handicap match, which sadly ended via DQ when Virgil broke up a pinfall attempt. Considering Warrior's title reign didn't really produce many classics, this one is up there with the best of his defenses, even with the duff finish. Number 8, Mr. Perfect versus Big Boss Man at the Main Event 4. Wrestling historians / nerds will know that Mr. Perfect defended his Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania VII against the Big Boss Man, but this rivalry actually stretched all the way back to the previous year. Perfect started this match from the Main Event 4 with plenty of gusto, laughing maniacally as he slapped the prison guard in the face. He wasn't laughing for long, mind, as Cobb County's finest got on the front foot, flinging Hennig around by his hair as the crowd went wild. Even when he was being chased by a big man in a dumb costume, Perfect still looked $1 million, displaying his vicious side by targeting Boss Man's ribs and nearly pinning his opponent several times with slick roll-ups. Boss Man put on a great show too, even kicking out of the dreaded Perfect Plex before Bobby Heenan appeared at ringside to lure Ray Traylor out of the ring and force a count-out. Sure, this may have been a bit silly in places, but both men still looked great and the fans were into everything they did. Also, if you don't like silly wrestling, then you should probably just avoid the early 90s as a whole. Number 7, The Hart Foundation versus The Rockers at Saturday night's main event. At the Main Event 4 show that featured in the last two entries, The Rockers won the tag team titles from The Hart Foundation in a match that never officially happened due to one of the ropes snapping and WWE subsequently refusing to air it. Earlier in the year though, these two teams had another match, one that wasn't banished to the depths of history. This clash from the April 28th Saturday night's main event show began with Bret Hart and Marty Jannetty, which wasn't a bad combo for the time. The action was blistering, especially when compared to the Akeem vs Big Boss Man match from later in the night, as Bret, Marty, Jim and Shawn all showed why they were the cream of the tag team crop. Power slams, super kicks, backbreakers, sunset flips, these great teams threw everything at each other, only to both get screwed out of a win when Demolition got involved for a double DQ. Listen, I know that's like the third DQ we've had on this list, but this was 1990, alright? It's just how things were done. Regardless of its flat finish, this was a great match, and as a bonus, no rings were destroyed in the making of it. Number 6, the $1 Million Team versus the Dream Team at Survivor Series. Survivor Series 1990 will live on in wrestling history as the first night WWE fans were introduced to one of the greatest and most popular wrestling characters of all time, The Undertaker. You thought we were going to do a bait and switch with a gobbledygooker, didn't you? We would never stoop so low. The Dead Man debuted as the mystery partner of Ted DiBiase's $1 Million Team, which also comprised the Honky Tonk Man, Greg Valentine, and Ted himself. Their opponents were the Dream Team, made up of Coco Beware, the Hart Foundation, and Dusty Rhodes, daddy. Taker looked amazing in his first match, eliminating both the Birdman and the American Dream with his freakish mix of power, speed, and zombie powers. Even once he'd been counted out, the match still ruled, especially during the final sequence between DiBiase and Bret Hart, which saw the $1 Million Man become sole survivor. Not only was the bulk of the action great, but we also got a history-making moment and a worthy winner in Pastor Ted. Number 5, the Royal Rumble match at Royal Rumble. The first 2 Royal Rumble matches had been pretty fun, unless you were the Warlord, but it was the third iteration that really showed what this stipulation was capable of. The $1 Million Man, who had bought himself the number 30 spot the year before, was thrown in at number 1, from which he put in the first ever Iron Man performance in Rumble history, lasting nearly 3/4 of an hour. The stacked field also included Andre the Giant, Randy Savage, Jake Roberts, Rick Rude, and Dusty Rhodes, but the 2 men who would come to define the match were Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. After their tense stare down earlier in the year, Hogan and Warrior once again faced off in front of an electric crowd who treated the sight of them running the ropes like it was Dynamite Kid versus Tiger Mask. Whilst Warrior would eventually be thrown out, Hogan made it all the way to the end, giving the Rumble its first ever megastar winner and firmly establishing it as something truly worth having on the pay-per-view calendar. Oh, and just before we move on, massive props to Mr. Perfect for his amazing over-the-corner bump for the final elimination. Number 4, Mr. Perfect versus Tito Santana at Saturday night's main event. Fans of championship matches were in dreamland on July 28, 1990, as that week's edition of Saturday night's main event featured not 1, not 2, but 3 of the buggers. The best of the bunch, as was the style at the time, was the Intercontinental Championship affair, which pitted champion Mr. Perfect against El Matador himself, Tito Santana. Santana, who had been with the company for some time at this point, was seen as somewhat past his prime, but with a great dance partner to work with, he showed there was still life in the old dog yet. From the rapid-fire opening to a huge ref bump to the nail-biting final sequence where finishers and near-falls were thrown around like confetti, the 2 men appeared to be neck and neck, with the result hanging in the balance the entire time. Sadly for our boy Tito, Hennig got the win after a fantastic series of reversals at the end, but the old hand had proven to everybody that he was still capable of going at the highest level. Also, this was an IC title match from 1990 with a clean finish. Never thought I'd see the day. Number 3, Mr. Perfect versus Roddy Piper on an MSG show. In December of 1990, Roddy Piper started to take a real dislike to Intercontinental Champion Mr. Perfect. Maybe he'd given him something rubbish in the office, Secret Santa? Or maybe Roddy was just unhinged. Whatever the reason, these 2 squared off for the mid-card belt at a Madison Square Garden event on the 28th, one of WWE's last major events of the year, and boy did they go out with a bang. Piper began the match by spitting right into Perfect's face, which he didn't take too kindly to, and this animosity fueled what turned into a hectic brawl between the 2 future Hall of Famers. Perfect's usually clinical style was no match for the Hot Rod's fiery offense, which left Hennig's singlet in tatters, as if he'd been mauled by some sort of kilt-wearing lion. The champion was able to get some offense in, trapping Piper in his own sleeper hold at one point, but it looked certain that the Scotsman was going to win. That is, until Perfect got himself counted out to protect himself. What a scamp. If you've never seen this match, you should really just go and check it out. It's a proper hidden gem. Number 2, Demolition versus the Hart Foundation at SummerSlam. After they got involved in that Saturday night's main event match from earlier, the Hart Foundation finally got their chance at revenge against Demolition at SummerSlam, where the face-painted team put their World Tag Team titles on the line against Bret and Jim. This was a 2 out of 3 falls match, which gave it a great 3-act structure. Demolition, who were represented by Smash and Crush here, won the first point using their elbow drop backbreaker combo, the Hitman and the Anvil tying things up when Crush caused a DQ. It was all to play for in the final stretch, as the Foundation had to overcome an interfering axe, but after a hard-fought fight and a big assist from the Legion of Doom, Hart and Neidhart made the winning cover and became 2-time tag team champs. Some would argue that this match was overbooked, there were 7 main players when all was said and done, but it certainly didn't feel that way. This was a proper big match with a great story behind it, full of twists and turns, great wrestling, and culminating in a title change that the SummerSlam crowd lost their minds over. Number 1, Hulk Hogan vs. The Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania VI. After crossing paths one too many times, Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior were set on a collision course for the main event of WrestleMania VI. World Champion versus Intercontinental Champion, beloved babyface versus beloved babyface, winner takes all. These two may not have been the most agile performers and certainly couldn't brag about their technical skills or anything, but the actual action wasn't really the point here. Just watching these two stand across the ring from each other was enough to send the Toronto crowd into a frenzy, and that excitement only intensified as the match went on. Especially when Warrior dodged the leg drop to hit Hogan with his patented splash and pin the Immortal Champion clean as a sheet. The torch had been passed and a new world champion had been crowned to lead WWE into its next era in what turned out to be an expertly booked and executed epic. Sure, Hogan kicked out at 3.000000001. Sure, Warrior's title reign was a bit of a dud overall. Sure, they'd have a crappy rematch in WCW 8 years later. But in the moment, none of that mattered.